Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it, midweek editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. Hope you're doing all right. Numbers to get in. We'll dive into some returning production for Nebraska football on the lines of scrimmage. Husker Hoops tip off in about an hour and a half as they get ready for Michigan. The Chrysler Center, once donned with the Fab 5 gear. That's been down for a long time, but Nebraska's yet to win in Ann Arbor. I about said East Lansing would have been slapped by some Michigan friends. So, yeah.
Come on. We all remember the Tram Petaway game.
They won at Michigan State.
At Michigan State, yeah. That's what I'm saying. You better not say East Lansing.
It was my birthday.
That Tram Petaway game was the stuff of legends.
Him and Walt, yeah. That was Walt Pitchford.
I think Petaway put up 30 and Pitchford put up 20, something like that.
Yeah, they were just killing Sparty that day.
And then
Top 10 Sparty.
And then Petaway put the dagger in with like 2 minutes left, and the Izzone just like their shoulders dropped.
They deflated. There was weeping. They left early. And then you followed it up about 5 weeks later with No Sit Sunday.
Yeah.
That was glorious. 9 years ago. Just to make you feel old. But we'll get into a little Husker basketball as well. Some Nebraska baseball on our mind. Husker Baseball will bolt with the media today. We'll spend some time with Mike Babcock in about 20 minutes on Husker Baseball. Mike Schuchart back with us from Wilderness Ridge, the Waste Management Open. Do you got buddies going down?
I have friends that are there that live in Phoenix that are going.
So they're going. They don't have to travel. They just make their way to the largest outdoor cocktail party, period, exclamation point.
Well, then we also have our friend Anna from Hurrdat Sports. She's down in Phoenix this weekend doing coverage of both the Waste Management Open and the Super Bowl.
Really?
She doesn't have tickets. Don't worry. She's just going to be standing outside.
But that's cool. I didn't know we could pitch that and get a sure. Note to self for next year. Good for her. Yeah. That's awesome, man.
You can follow along with her, Anna Bellinghausen.
Yeah, do so. Hurrdat Sports, for sure. At
Hurrdat Sports on Twitter and TikTok is where you can get updates from her.
So, yeah, she's down there. But our old buddy Jaybird is down there. Him and some buddies rented a house. They're en route as we speak. And they got a deal about a year ago, it sounds like, for this whole week. They're not going to the Super Bowl, but they got the hookup. It's pretty cool. So Shuey with us in about 30 minutes, and then Evan Bland in the 5 o'clock hour. You can find us on our socials, ESPN Lincoln Facebook and ESPN Lincoln Twitter. You can also watch the show this way with the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and give us a follow on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Catch us on the way home 4 to 6. Catch Damon and Andrew in the morning 7 to 9 weekdays on ESPN Lincoln and Omaha's ESPN 590. So that's what's set for you. Not optimistic for Nebraska basketball tonight. Spread right now is at -11. You've got a lot of weapons for, if you talk to folks around the Big Ten, Michigan's supposed to be one of those teams that are anywhere from 4 through 6. In a good year, they're top 3. In a vintage, non-NCAA, we're going to take your accolades away year, they're 1. They've been, when Beeline was there, they went to the NCAA championship game 2 times in 4 years, and they weren't a 1 seed, but they were very good with Wagner and company. Mm-hmm. They were really pretty talented. They are similar with talent level. Hunter Dickinson's a beast. He's 7'1", 260, great around the rim, very patient to find shooters. And, by the way, he's a shade under 40% from three-point land. But Nebraska, they've had their moments when we think of Edey and how they defended him here in Lincoln. Nebraska knows how to take on bigs in the league, what type of offense and ball care are you going to get if you're Nebraska basketball tonight? We'll hear a little bit more from Fred coming up on that. But your key principles for Nebraska basketball moving forward, transition D, rebounding. When Fred talks rebounding, it's a lot like hearing Coach McBride talking about stopping the run. All right? I mean, that's what I equate it to if we're going to cross sports for a moment and, take care of the basketball. Nebraska coming off, feeling great about what they did against Penn State as far as how efficient they were, the way they answered runs, and the way they played defensively. I'm not sure that they can get it done, quite frankly, because I don't know who the hero is going to be tonight. I think you'll get steady play from Walker if he stays out of foul trouble. I think you'll get steady play from Sam Griesel. But who's going to be
that third guy?
Who's going to be? I mean, is it going to take like Kisei going off for 30 again? What's his encore like? Right? Does he stay hot, or does he come in thinking he's hot, and is it a nightmare of efficiency where he's just forcing shots, thinking he's got the hot hand? I don't know. I mean, I would like to think they'll play within the offense and share the ball. Is this a game tonight for Jamarcus Lawrence to kind of continue his ascension? Could he give you double digits or teen double digits, right? Can he maybe find a bit of a spark? What do you get from Hoiberg? He's been a nice spark, too, for the Nebraska basketball team. And does Wiltshire go off? Guy's got the ability. He's got the talent.
Well,
Is this the Wiltshire game? I mean, he had a great game against Indiana, but it was empty calories. You were getting drilled.
That's the thing with Wiltshire is it feels like you're ready for him to have that performance where he checks in, he's got a confident-looking stroke, and then he bricks his first shot, and then he never quite looks like what you expected him to look like whenever you're coming into this season. Like, I'm not sure if it's a confidence thing with him, just one of those things where the shots weren't falling early in the season. He's got in his own head.
I think it's a frustration.
But you just wonder, when's going to be that night whenever the first look drops, and the second look drops, and now C.J. Wilcher's on a tear? Because I know it's going to happen one of these games to close the season. One of these games, I can almost guarantee it, and if I'm wrong, I'll burn this tape. But regardless, there's going to be that one game where C.J. Wilcher gets a couple looks to fall early in the game, and he's going to look just like that C.J. Wilcher that you were expecting early in the year, where he's bringing effort, intensity. He's shooting 40 to 50% from three in the game when he goes and drops 25 points. It's bound to happen at least one of the games this year. It's just a question of when is he going to have that game where he can get a shot or two to drop early. And could it be tonight? Maybe, but based on what we've seen from C.J. Wilcher so far this year, it's just... It seems further and further from possibility, but there's just that feeling in the back of my mind that he's got it in his locker to do it at least once this season. And if he can break that poor shooting streak, just get that one game to build some confidence, you wonder what he can do with it.
Well, he'll come in and hit a couple of tough shots and then miss the wide open ones. And he's going to run similar offense to Kisei, where he's doing a lot of back cuts. I mean, I can't tell you how many 50-50 shots at the rim go the wrong way for him, or he just doesn't catch it cleanly underneath it. He gets almost panicky where he doesn't get it cleanly and they don't finish at the rim. So quick thought on Nebraska basketball. Let's get to Nebraska football as winter conditioning continues. And offensive line is going to be so vital. Good story in the World Herald today with just what Nebraska was. And you saw it as a Nebraska fan, that inconsistency. You saw injury. You saw mixed and matched lineups due to injury. You had 6 different starting rotations, and you played 12 games. So you didn't have a lot of continuity at the time, and you had guys taking one for the team. You had Turner Corcoran playing a lot of tackle because Teddy went down. When I think Turner was slated to be at a guard last year. So where do you go from a offensive line that was second worst, according to Pro Football Focus, in the Big Ten? Second worst when it came to grading in run blocking. Second worst when it came to grading in pass blocking. I will say this. They got better as the year went on, pass blocking. I know they didn't score a lot of points against Michigan, but it could have been a heck of a lot worse. I know there was plenty of time for Nebraska to go downtown to Palmer, specifically against Iowa. Nebraska had plenty of time in that ball game. So Nebraska was kind of a walking wounded. Elijah, what the reality is, you can only go one direction from where you're up. Well, you can theoretically go another direction, go from second worst to worst. I don't think that happens. How far do they climb this year? And you have almost 65% of snaps taken last year back in the room. You don't have Hickson anymore. You don't have Bando anymore. But you've got guys in there that can compete and fill that opening, specifically with Scott at center. That's not a bad option. You have guys who have started more than just a cup of coffee in the Big Ten. You have 5 spots on the line and a boatload of guys who have starting experience. Benhart, Piper, Corcoran, Nuri, Big Teddy, Henry O, Hunter Anthony. All those guys are fighting for 5 spots. Scott, of course, a newcomer. What's Jacob Hood's availability? Is he a project, or is he a guy that swings at a tackle spot that you rotate in? Back when Nebraska had a kind of a more vintage line, you had Qualley, you had Searles, and then you had H-Rod. You had a really good rotation of 3 tackles there on top of how solid your interior was. You were also running for 250 a game and had a really good play-action game. I like what Nebraska has back, and I like the fact they've got the same offensive line coach as a second year in a row in Raiola that can get them better. And you've got a lot of eyeballs on this football team that have offensive line expertise, beginning with your head football coach. So I do buy the quote, we're going to have a good line this year from Matt Rule. He's not, and he said it repeatedly, podcast, radio, wherever you hear him, that he's not really down on the offensive line. I don't think Raiola's down on the offensive line. And how harsh of a grader are you with their run game? We know that some of the backs tried to do things on their own. There wasn't a lot of trust in a hole being open, okay? That said, you didn't emphasize the run. It was an afterthought with Coach Whip in the offense. You didn't really have much quarterback run unless it was inside the 5. That's where Casey would keep it, but it wasn't between the 20s, so you didn't have much variation in the run game. It was a single back, let's hand it off between the tackles and see what AG can do. And AG's like, dude, there's nothing there. I'm going to bounce this thing. And that didn't work out all the time.
Well, I'll just say I was one of the earlier doom and gloom people on the offensive line last year. It wasn't this early in the year last year, but probably just following the spring game. I was one of the first people who said, I'm worried about this offensive line. And I think that this offense will go as far as the offensive line can take them. And the offensive line really couldn't take the offense that far last year. Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer did what they could offensively, but the offensive line was hamstringing the offense. And as it stands right now, I still don't think that the offensive line is anything but the worst link on the offense next year. That's not what you want your offense to be, but I will say I am higher on this offensive line right now than I was a year ago today.
Because of the options?
Because of the options. There's more depth, and that's what I think is going to be a great way to judge, and it may sound counterintuitive, but I think look at the second string guys in the offensive line to judge the starters, if you follow what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. If you're getting guys like Majacek and Gatula in that 2-deep, the warning bells are going to start going off for me. It's a big problem. And that's kind of what I feel like we're looking at last year, where there's guys in that 2-deep that you go, well, these guys are unproven. Why are they in the 2-deep with Hunter Anthony? It's no discredit to Hunter Anthony. I think people were high on Hunter Anthony coming out of Oklahoma State, but he wasn't a guy who was starting for that Oklahoma State team. He was getting spot minutes. Then whenever he steps in on short notice into this Husker offensive line, and now he's on the 2-deep and fighting for a starting spot, I think my warning bells were going off whenever you compare him to the guys that he was fighting against. A high 4-star in Benhart, a high 4-star in Corcoran, a high 4-star in Prohaska. Hunter Anthony's coming in and competing with these guys, and he might be getting a starting spot. And then you look at Kevin Williams, too. I think he was a really, really good player at Northern Colorado, and he's a good depth piece to have. But whenever you're talking about him being your starting left guard, now that Nuri's out last year, you're going, okay, what's going on? So I think look at the backups, and if there's guys like Corcoran, Prohaska, like these guys that were starters last year, if you see those guys in the 2-deep, I think it means very, very good things for this offensive line. It means there's competition. But also, is there experience in that 2-deep? Simply because once you get to October and November in the Big Ten, you're not going to have that same starting 5. It's not going to be a case of Nebraska, whichever starting 5 they trot out with, week 1 against Minnesota is not going to be the same starting 5 they finished the year with. You can mark my words on that. That's just how the Big Ten goes. You're going to be mixing and matching. So with the offensive line, it's less those 5 starters and more. What is those 10 guys in the 2 deep? What are they as a whole? It's going to be a much better way to judge this offensive line just based on how rugged and tough the Big Ten is.
Can you find me 8? Can you find me a swing tackle? Can you find me a swing guard? Can you find me a backup center?
Sure.
Right, that's kind of my bare minimum here. And if the offensive line looks like a healthy Teddy at left tackle, we've seen 4 or 5 games from the poor kid. And what we've seen, we've liked, right? Even at a young age. At left guard, does Nuri win that spot, or do you keep Corker in there? You put Scott in at center. Do you move Nuri to right guard?
Well, but based on what I saw 2 years ago, I think Nuri's got a chance of being the best guy in this offensive line next year. If he made the strides that you think he could have in a year of not playing, not having to go through the grind of the Big Ten, I think he could be a guy that's your rock on the offensive line.
Well, I'm saying I think I would like to see a full season of Corcoran settling in at one spot, not flipping from guard to tackle or from left tackle to right tackle. And if Benhart can't lock that spot down, do you have Turner at right tackle, where he's at least performed better? But he could be a nails guard for you. They have options. It'll be interesting. Mike Babcock's next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk Waste Management Open, Mike Schuchart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. About 20 minutes, 15 minutes away. We say hi to Mike Babcock from HailVarsity.com and a magazine at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, sometime you're going to have to show us your collection of Grateful Dead figurines. And I sent you that tweet of Bill Walton getting his party on in his Grateful Dead shed. Do you have a Dead shed out back?
No, I don't. I've only got a couple of Jerry Garcia figures. They're pretty old, actually.
No, those are sweet, though. I mean, the Walton, he was ready to go, man, and getting ready for the Conference of Champions coverage, of course, this weekend. But
can I just say, a Dead shed sounds way too Silence of the Lambs for me.
No. I mean, if you're going to go anywhere weird, you got to go Dexter. He had a shed at one point, I think in season 3.
Sure.
But no, Dead Shed, I mean, it's a place you can go play your music and relax. Do your thing. So, Babbers, we're talking football here, returning production. We are focusing on one of our favorite topics, the offensive line. Do you feel about some of the names that are back? Spring's a bit away. I get that part of it. I understand that the stats aren't kind to Nebraska, but man, if they get coached up and hit their ceiling, you could have a good offensive line. That's Matt Rule's plan anyway.
Yeah, well, as you guys indicated, emphasized, the coach is back, the offensive line coach is back in Riley. I think that's positive. I think they've brought in enough guys. You guys just turned into circles there for a minute, but
see, the Dead Shed.
I look better as a circle. We got to do that.
You're good. You're good.
But I think with the coach back and the guys that are returning, plus the guys that they're bringing in, what I like about it is the competition. There's going to be competition. That's going to make you better. And I agree with you, Smitty, that what you said, it's a tradition going back to the Osborne era that you need to find at least a third tackle, somebody that can play on either side. You need to find at least a third guard, somebody that can play on either side. And you need to get those guys have an opportunity to get into games in situations where it matters. They don't just sit on the sideline and watch. They have to be in the game at a point where it matters. So you rotate those guys in. Typically, you don't rotate the center unless there's an injury problem or whatever. But the tackle and guard thing I think is important. And again, I think it has to be emphasized that they've got to get in games when it matters, those backup guys, so that it essentially feels like you've got at least, at minimum, 7 offensive linemen that are ready to go, that are prepared. And I think the competition in the spring will give you an opportunity to have that with guys coming back. Teddy, for example, if he can stay healthy, he can develop. He's still got room to develop, obviously. He's got the size to play in the Big Ten, obviously. Neely, need to keep him healthy. I think he's got an opportunity to be a key figure in that offensive line if he can stay healthy. But again, it's the competition. It's the guys that are coming in, dealing with the guys that are returning, and what do they produce in that competition.
Mike, I think as it stands right now, it's fair to say that this offensive line is probably the weak link of this football team, despite we haven't seen these guys in the field. We haven't seen what this coaching staff has done with them. But I think as it stands right now, that's a pretty reasonable thing to say. Would you agree with that? And would you say the question right now is how weak is that link?
I wouldn't use the word weak. I would use the word question. There's more question about the offensive line than there probably is in other areas. I don't want to say weak link because I think they have the potential to be decent, at least if not pretty good. Begin what we've said and what you guys have been talking about. So I wouldn't use the word weak, but it's probably the one question area, maybe on either side of the ball, where you have to have some answers, and that's going to come hopefully in the spring. You're going to see some of that.
And I guess what I mean by weak link is just the fact that if I was an opposing defensive coordinator in the Big Ten or just an opposing head coach, if I was watching Nebraska's game film from last year, my game plan would be find a way to overwhelm that offensive line. That's the area of the team that you're going to test first in your game plan as you prepare for this Husker team. That's where I was coming from.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and that's good too, because the offensive line this year is not going to be what on film from last year for the most part because of injuries and because of guys that are no longer here and guys that are coming in.
Mike, going to switch gears. Coach Bolt met with the media today. Husker Baseball, plenty of expectations a year ago at this time. They did not live up to those. Probably some chemistry issues, injury issues as well. And you've got a retooled roster. What's your take on Big Red Baseball here as things get going the 17th?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Will Bold as a coach. You know, I go back to that gritty beats pretty kind of mantra, and that's very characteristic of the way they do things. So I think that there's reason for optimism. I think they brought in some good guys. I'm really interested in seeing Caleb Clark pitch, the guy from Ontario, Canada, because as a freshman, Will Bolt really talked him up today, and it sounds like he has tremendous potential. So, that speaks a lot. I think if the head coach in a preseason news conference starts talking about a freshman pitcher, and he's one of the guys that he talked most about, actually. I think that speaks well for you. You seem to indicate that they've got maybe 3 starters in mind, and they're maybe looking for a fourth. That first series that they play 4 games, he said they had probably 3 pitching spots for starters set up. It's great for a guy like Shea Shanneman to come back and take that attitude of whatever you need me. You know, if you need me as a reliever, that's what I'll do kind of thing. Efrain Cervantes elected a captain. There's a guy that wherever you need me, I'll play in the infield. I'll do whatever it takes. That kind of attitude fits into the Bolt plan, I think. And again, I think there's reason for optimism because of the guys that have come in. If they can fit in with the guys that are coming back, guys like Max Anderson, Griffin Everett, those kind of guys, if you can mesh, that's the thing, I guess. If you've got a lot of new guys or you got guys that are going to play new roles in the situation, how do they fit? And to me, that's the big question. But I have a lot of respect for Will Bolt and his staff, what they're going to do and what they're going to demand of players. And I think the players will respond to that.
Mike Babcock's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Mike, as you watch the first few weekends of the season for Husker Baseball, what are you going to be watching for to gauge how good this team can be as the year goes on?
I think that starting pitching thing is big. If you can do that, and again, health. A guy like Kyle Perry, can he stay healthy? that's the thing for me. It's probably the thing for anybody that looking at pretty much at any team is what does your pitching looks like? Do you have a couple, 3 starters that you can count on, and do you have guys that can come in from the bullpen and get the job done when necessary? And I think Nebraska has the pieces. If they can fit that together, I think that they're in a pretty good position there. And believe. You got to believe in yourself. That's the thing.
Babbers, who's going to be the Tominaga tonight against Michigan? Who's going to give Fred some career high numbers?
And you can say Kisei.
Yeah, he's not off the board.
I was going to say Tominaga in response to your question, who's going to be the Tominaga? But with Nebraska basketball, we see it seems to change from game to game. One of the players that Sam Hoiberg has really stepped up, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is very aggressive. Defensively, he really hustles. He works hard on defense. He moves. And when Nebraska moves the ball a little bit, I think that's offensively, I think that's when they're most effective. And Tominaga, I'd like to see him follow up with something. You guys also mentioned C.J. Wilcher earlier. Early in the season, C.J. would take a 3-point shot, and you felt pretty good about this situation. And then he's gone through a slump here. He really hasn't played to the same level that he did early in the season. I think at some point he could have a breakout. He could have a breakout game because he has the talent, the ability to do it, but he just hasn't been getting it done here lately to the degree to the standard that he set.
His season high, I think, is 18 against Indiana, but you were always 11 to 13 down, right? Or you'd maybe push it to under 10, but you really never got over the hump there. But, it's just kind of a mixed bag with Nebraska. I don't think Michigan's invincible by any means. They're just kind of sleepwalking. 1 minute they're really good on a given night against a big name opponent, and sometimes they're just out to lunch. But talent-wise, they have enough talent to drill most teams in the league. They just haven't put it together. Babber's got about 90 seconds here. Let's talk Super Bowl 57. And what are you looking forward to? Are you going to be breaking out a Sioux jersey?
No, I'm going to be impartial. I'm not going to root for one side or the other. I'm just going to look for a good game. I hope it's a competitive game. I think that has the potential to be that because I think these are probably the 2 teams that belong in this game, and so no, I'm not gonna pick one side or the other. Although you got Big Sue and you got Jack Stoll mm-hmm. and Cameron Jurgens and who am I forgetting on KC?
You got DiCaprio Boodle.
Yeah, Boodle. That's right. So. You got some Husker influence there, a little more on the Philadelphia side, but Kansas City's a little closer to us. So, and Patrick Mahomes is the definition of gritty. He'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. But Philadelphia has to be able to stop Chris Jones.
Good call.
That's for sure.
No, they're the lines of scrimmage look to be favored for the Philly D-line and Philly O-line, but, Chris Jones has been a man on a mission this postseason. Babbers, real quick, what do you got coming up with Hail Varsity, bud?
Well, the magazines, we're getting ready for the magazine next week, I think next midweek, and we've got some good stuff. I'm not going to say what it is, but we're starting to get the copy in there, and it's going to be. I just I just edited a thing that Brady Oltmans did about all the newcomers coming in here. Which to me is interesting because I can't keep up with. They got 39 newcomers coming in on the football team, so that kind of helped me get coordinated a little bit by position. But it's going to be. I think we've got a softball story coming in, and it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Babbers, thanks for the time today, bud.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Evan Bland going to spend time with us here in about 20 minutes. Husker Baseball will preview this upcoming season. More thoughts on Nebraska, Michigan. Football on our mind, of course, with spring around the corner. It is going to be a party down at Phoenix, the Waste Management Open. We welcome in Mike Schuchart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey, let's put it down next year. Let's just roadie down to Phoenix and set up shop. Are you down?
Oh, man. You know what kind of a zoo that place is going to be? Especially this.
Oh, I can't wait.
My favorite kind of zoo.
I thrive in zoos.
You got the Super Bowl, you got the Waste Management. Man, that place is hopping right now.
Well, you know what? I'd probably head up to the Hurrdat Zoo some more if there were beer showers every single day.
I can arrange that. We'll get you showered up, Elijah. Shuey, how you been? It's been a couple of weeks. What have you been doing? Give us the lowdown.
I've been good. We're going to open our golf course this weekend. How about that?
That is awesome.
So as long as the weather holds, like they said, so people are excited about that. We opened our outdoor driving range along with our academy, so that's been going crazy, keeping us very busy. And then we have our soft opening for our new members area called the Timbers. So that's tomorrow night. Super excited about that. Having people finally have an opportunity to see it. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'll take a picture and send it to you.
That's I'm going to be like Belushi in a ladder. I'm going to find my way in there.
that was cold-blooded from Schuchart. He's like, you're never getting in there, so at least I'll send you a picture.
Schmidt, we may let you drink a whiskey on the deck, but don't go in that door. That's pretty good. You send me a pic, Shuey. I will cherish it until I break the piggy bank someday. Actually, I'm just going to sweet talk Mama, get her into golf.
There you go.
So, Waste Management Open. Listen, you've had good showing by Justin Thomas. Morikawa has had a great start to 2023. Finau knocked on the door in 2020. I mean, you still got Rory, you still got Day. Handicap this thing for me. Who do you like, and what does the course? What's the biggest challenge with the course, and also the energy, the vibe you were touching on to start out with? How can that really feed into a player's game?
Well, that's going to be something that there's so many young guys this year that have played so well. But this is a different environment when you go through the tunnel to get onto 16. And what happened last year, it's going to be twice that this year. They kind of set the stage for what can happen there. Man, it's going to be crazy. So better have a strong mental capability when you walk in there, because as much as they cheer, they also boo you. So it's like some of those young guys will have a little trouble with that. So the guys that have been around that really kind of relish it, they have seen it, like a Rory and Justin Rose, who, first the tournament out basically played awesome. But you got Sam Ryder, Tyler Williamson. You got a bunch of young guys that are really playing well this year. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot of new names come up there. The youth movement, Tyler Williamson, nobody probably even heard of him, but he's finished in the top 10 like every tournament this year. So pretty good. Sam Ryder, But you can tell Sam Ryder at Torrey was coming down the stretch. He got a little nervous, and you could see a few straightward shots. So Max Homa will always be tough. Anytime you get another win, that builds your confidence. He likes those environments.
Mike, in your opinion, the best way to win over a crowd such as this, raucous, a little bit liquored up, if you're a golfer, the best way to win over the crowd is how?
Interact with them. Act almost as crazy as they are. It's kind of like, I think back to the Ryder Cup when they came out of the tunnel, everybody was around the first tee, and they started throwing like T-shirts and towels up into the crowd. So if you interact with them, man, they love you to death.
And do you think it's important to win over the crowd in a weekend like this?
Oh, yeah, no question.
Chewy, who did you fist bump or chest bump or headbutt in your day?
Or shotgun a beer with?
Yes.
There was a little guy at the L.A. Open. There was a little orange guy that was sitting behind the green. I happened to hit it over the green, up on the hill, and he had to kind of back up and move right behind me so I could hit my shot. And I hit my shot, and I hold it, and he come running at me, jumped on me. So that was my man.
That's awesome.
It was pretty fun. So here's my other one. This guy might remember this. Well, it's been a long time ago. So they used to play, it's now the Korn Ferry Tournament. They used to play it up at Champions. Mm-hmm. And I was playing in the Celebrity Scramble on Wednesday. Well, my partner is Eric Strickland.
Sure.
So we make it to the last hole. I think it's me and Strick playing Piakowski, and I can't remember who the other guy was. But I make this putt in the last hole to win the shootout. He comes running at me and gives me a little chest bump, knock me flat on my butt. So it's like that guy was pretty strong and pretty solid.
That sounds like Strick for sure. And well, good, man. So you had a win up there with Korn Ferry. That's big. Your dude in LA's awesome. I love that story. Now pick a winner for the kids. Who's going to get it done here down in Phoenix?
I like JT. I always like JT. I mean, he loves the crowds. He loves those environments. He relishes in that. So I think he'll be right there. I like him a lot. And I like Max Homna too.
Okay.
Now, Mike, give us a winner in the Super Bowl Sunday. It's a big weekend for Phoenix with the Waste Management Open and the Super Bowl all in one weekend. Flights are crazy. Hotels are crazy. I hear downtown Phoenix is already crazy. So give me your winner for the Super Bowl on Sunday.
I love the Chiefs because of Mahomes, but I got to pick Philadelphia. I think they're too good top to bottom.
Any interesting Sioux golf stories you can share?
No, I'm not. I think he was out here one time playing, and I never really got to interact with him much. So
there's the Legend of Bo Pelini golf stories where there may have been a green or two harmed.
Yeah, thanks. One or two clubs went airborne.
Well, possibly. If you miss a shot and you have an episode, you just got to go to the sand trap and unleash the fury there.
Exactly.
That's it.
So, sometimes you just got to let it go. You can't have it pinned up, then your head will explode.
You ever let out a shriek? Or did you just go into the woods like Shooter McGavin and screamed?
So when I was growing up as a kid, I never could hit my driver very well, but I had this four-wood, man. I could just cream. I loved it. And then I would break it like every other week.
Oh, no.
So finally my dad said, that's it. I said, you break it again, you got to learn how to fix them. So I learned how to do club repair really fast. So I learned how to I wouldn't have to play with.
I love that. Shuey, we'll check in next week, but thanks for a few minutes.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Everybody stay safe.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, can always get the show podcast form, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio. Subscribe, give us a rating, appreciate the feedback. You can check out the segments you want to hear. If you want to just catch with Shuey, go for it. Hear from Babbers, Mike Babcock, do so. Opening segment rant, go for it there. Or the full show, easy to download and take with you. The video version is there for you every evening and beyond the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Let's hear a little bit from Fred Hoiberg here as he's got to defend Hunter Dickinson. Really good big post down low for Michigan. Good three-point distance as well. And Nebraska's had their problems with Michigan bigs for quite a while. Can it change tonight? Here's Fred.
Yeah, I think the thing where Hunter's game has really evolved is his perimeter game, and he sees a lot of different coverages. Some teams play him one-on-one. Most teams have to double just to have a fighting chance down there against him, but he's a really good passer, and he does a great job with the little retreat dribble. They dive, they're four-man, and they have great spacing on the backside. So he's obviously one of the toughest challenges that you have, and putting a game plan in just to try to throw different things at him where he's not seeing the same coverage for 40 minutes is very important. And, there's going to be an important game. Blaze will have to be a factor in this game with his body. He was available last game. We just felt with Penn State and the way they played, going small, that we were better off with Wilhelm as the backup at the 5. But Blaze is going to have to be ready to go out there and give us significant minutes. Going to have to do a good job with our hands, get good hand pressure. If not, he's going to pick us apart in the weak side where they have really good shooting over there. So, good opportunity to go on the road. We got to come out with the same mentality we did against Penn State, have to come out with some type of edge. They're very good in that building. Jet Howard is one of the most impressive freshmen that I've seen, and the way he scores at a 3-level score with his size makes it very tough. We got to get back in transition, and we have to take care of the glass. They're really good crashing. And then, for us, taking care of the basketball, I think you saw in the last game 17 assists, 7 turnovers was a formula for winning. But if we turn it over, you don't have much of a chance on the road.
Nebraska has looked better at home and on the road with their starts. They've been competitive. They played Illinois really tough, and it kind of slipped away at the end there. They got back against Penn State. The February schedule's nice. We'll be down at Rosie's February 28th ahead of Michigan State and Nebraska. So excited about that. Invite you down to Rosie's here towards the end of the month. But, I like Nebraska's mindset right now. They know what they got to do. They don't really seem to get discouraged. They've had all sorts of adversity, and they keep throwing punches. Michigan's one of those teams. You talk to folks around college basketball and just in the Big Ten, Michigan shouldn't be on the wrong side of the bubble with their talent. There's some real questions and doubt right now about Juwan Howard moving forward, and you don't want to not get to a tournament when you have a talent like Dickinson. You don't want to not get to a tournament when you have a couple of other double-digit scores around him. You have pros on that team, and your kid, the freshman's been really good. I mean, he's been Big Ten ready. So we'll see if Michigan puts a run together or if Nebraska can add to the misery. Evan Bland joins us, Omaha World Herald, Husker Baseball, and some football thoughts on the way next hour.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald, at Evan Bland, OWH, on Twitter. Evan, some football on our minds. Super Bowl Sunday looms, and, Big Red Baseball is a little more than a week away. How we doing?
I mean, you can't beat this time of year. College basketball's winding down. Yeah, football's wrapping up. It's low 50s today and sunny. Who can complain?
Who's your Husker baseball goat? Like, growing up, were you an Erstad guy? You're not that old, but Gordon and Comine. I remember Darren going to the Buck, watching him. My brother played with Alex, and then Shane was just incredible. So I'm pleading the fifth. I love them all.
Yeah, I mean, I can date myself a little bit. I mean, when I was a kid, I went to Buck Belzer games growing up, and early on, they had crowds of just a few hundred, and I remember getting foul balls from Ken Harvey when he would foul off a couple that would hit Memorial Stadium, and then they would just sort of land out there, and I'd run around and get them as a kid. that sort of thing. I mean, I remember Shane Comine and the Hawaii 5-0, walk-up music, I suppose you want to call it, warm-up music that he had, and thinking how cool that was. So he's up there just from a childhood perspective. I went to Lincoln Southeast. I was a couple years behind Alex Gordon. So I remember him hitting, whatever it was, 500, 600 as a senior with the Knights, and thinking like, man, I can't wait to see what this guy does at Nebraska. And sure enough, he has, a great career there. So I suppose it would be one of those two. I think maybe Comine, just because to me, he sort of symbolizes like the rise of Nebraska baseball beyond what everyone at the time thought possible. Like, you just never thought you would have a guy that dominant who would lead you to the College World Series and who would do battle with top SEC programs and things like that. So I think just that transition from Buck Belzer to Haymarket and Comine being a part of that, I'd probably put him up there. But you can't go wrong with any of those guys. I mean, Darren Erstad, the number one pick, Alex Gordon winning college baseball's equivalent of the Heisman. It's a pretty cool deal, and all those guys deserve to be honored. That's going to be a fun pregame ceremony on March 24th.
It will be, and all three of those guys, absolute grinders, similar to the Will Bolton mentality. Evan, let's dive into baseball and talk expectations. And you had, I think the number was 18 juniors and seniors last year, but it just never materialized when it came to closing down games or having consistent offense. But I really do like some of the pieces that are back that did produce last year that have a chance to thrive this year. What's your outlook here for Nebraska baseball this season?
Well, I think the expectation part is interesting to me, Chris, because you ask Will Bolton the players, and they have sort of their standard goal every year, which is to host a regional, something that they haven't done since 2008. I think in a normal circumstance, they would have done that in 2021 without the league-only season, but that's sort of what they expect to do, that to contend for the Big Ten. I look at the Big Ten and how it lines up. I still think Maryland is that team to beat. I mean, they were far and away the best power team in the conference last year. They hosted a regional. They bring back a lot of their major pieces, not the player of the year, and Chris Aileen, he's in the pros, but a lot of those top contributors return. So I still think Maryland is the team to beat. I think Iowa, maybe along with Maryland, are the only teams that maybe have better pitching depth than Nebraska. So I think those, are two teams that you would have to look at toward the top. But I see no reason why Nebraska can't do what it's done a lot in the last 5 to 7 years, which is be right in the thick of the Big Ten race down to the wire, to make a tournament run in the Big Ten and then play in a regional somewhere. I think that's realistic, considering, again, the depth of pitching that they have. I mean, you think about the fact that Nebraska could have 3 guys who've been Friday night starters coming out of the bullpen this year for them. That's how strong they look, at least on paper, and barring injury and everything like that. I think, to me, the big question early on is going to be, what does the offense look like? Because in an era of college baseball where power has exploded in the last few years, Nebraska's sort of kind of stayed where it is. And it's okay if you do that, if you want to hang your hat on speed and small ball and pressuring the defense and things like that. You can win games and win a lot of games doing that, but Nebraska just didn't have that dynamic variety of skill sets last year to do it. And I think that was something that played out in a lot of their close losses especially. So I'll be curious to see, if guys like Bryce Matthews and Max Anderson can take that next step, if the fact that the lineup being deeper helps them take that next step and sort of protects them from being pitched around. A guy like Casey Burnham in center field, I think, has a lot of the skill set characteristics that Jackson Hallmark did a couple of years ago in terms of speed and the bunt game. Dylan Carey, they really like at third base. He hit .350 against college pitching, as a guy who was straight out of high school last summer. So there are a lot of pieces that you can point to and say that they're going to be better. I'll just be really fascinated to see how they piece it together, especially these first 3 weekends when they're on the road, and that's a really big opportunity to sort of set your RPI for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Evan, if we go back 365 days, it felt like the goal of the last season was to take that next step with Husker Baseball, host a regional, and then who would have thought, as you said, Maryland would be the team out of the Big Ten that'd be hosting a regional. So when you look at this season, is that too lofty of aspirations to hope that this Husker Baseball team can go and host a regional, or should that be what this team is looking for at the end of the season?
Well, I mean, it's not impossible. I think you see big progressions in different teams every year. Like a year ago at this time, I thought Rutgers would be, struggling to make the Big Ten tournament. And they won 40-some games. They were probably the biggest snub from the NCAA tournament, and they were really good. And to me, if you want to make a case for why Nebraska could host a regional, I think it starts with what the coaches have gone all in on this offseason, which was the value of experience. And that was the area that they really pointed to last year, was the makeup of their roster was such where they had a lot of seniors, a lot of freshmen, and then there's sort of this gap in the middle. And, players sort of described the offense as hero ball at times, where guys were sort of looking out for their own, and it was hard to support each other and that sort of thing. And so what did they do? I mean, they went out and brought back, first of all, a number of fifth-year guys like Griffin Everett or Kyle Perry or Shea Shanneman, Ephraim Cervantes, but they also added some experienced guys too. Charlie Fisher is probably going to get significant time at first base from Southern Miss. Michael Garza from Incarnate Words, a fifth-year guy. You can kind of go down the list and see these guys who are 21, 22, 23, and then I just think that translates really well, especially right now in college baseball, where you're still filtering out the rest of these guys who went through the COVID year in 2020. So I think that's probably where it starts, is a team that maybe isn't statistically dominant in one area, but one that, man, when the offense isn't going, the pitchers are going to pick them up. And if the pitchers are having a down day, the offense can score 7 or 8 runs, and the defense is going to be reliable, and they'll be consistent because there's some maturity there. So I think that's what they're banking on. You go to a practice and you hear everybody kind of whooping and hollering. It doesn't feel forced that this team likes each other, and for some reason it has staying power in, I think, most sports, but especially in baseball, when you're together so often every day competing, there's just a value in sort of that camaraderie that they have. And I think that was something that they really put an emphasis on. And you combine that with talent, and we'll see what that turns into in terms of the record this spring.
Evan Bland, a few minutes with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Husker Baseball thoughts. And you have the reality of chemistry and camaraderie that was lacking last year. Who's a key or two that's going to be that glue guy for this dugout? Who's going to be the personality or two to set guys straight, but also kind of lead by example with this roster? Does Nebraska have a ready-made guy, or is there somebody or a couple of guys that have grown into the necessary leadership role?
Well, I think you start with your captains, and that was something I know Will Bolt says often, and he brought back captains to Nebraska. They hadn't had that I think since he had left in the early 2000s when he was a senior captain. And the reasoning behind it is you can't assume that somebody will step into that role. You have to be intentional about it and make sure somebody sort of holds up that mantle. And so I think you start with the captains. Kyle Perry comes to mind for me first and foremost. I mean, you think about how he missed a lot of the last couple of seasons with Tommy John, recovering from Tommy John surgery, and he would still travel because the coaches felt that strongly about his presence in the dugout and around the guys and keeping them going. So I think he's one of those infectious personalities who can have a lot of fun, but also gets really serious and competitive when he needs to. Like Griffin Everett's the same kind of way. I think he's a little bit more of a quieter, steady presence. I mean, Shea Shanneman, he's 23. He's married. He's on he's as mature as it gets, if that's the standard there. So, and then Ephraim Cervantes comes back. He's a former JUCO guy who, he spoke today here at Memorial Stadium talking about how, nothing's ever been given to him, and he's always had to earn everything, but he's a really likable guy, inviting guy. So I think those are probably where you have to start. And then in terms of the newcomers, everybody talks about a couple of the JUCO additions, Blake Mosley and Bryce Hughes, a couple of guys who are just their own dudes. I mean, they'll show up wearing MLB jerseys or they'll blast a playlist, or they just like to mix it up and keep things loose. And I think you'll see them get some time on the infield and maybe the outfield as the season goes on. Not necessarily everyday starters, but guys who are, nonetheless important to what this team is going to do. And for what it's worth, again, this is another area that coaches have really hammered home in on recruiting, to the point to where, they're not just evaluating a guy's skill set, but also how does he carry a conversation? How does he interact with others? Because there's just so much importance on intangibles like that in this sport. And it's going to be really fascinating to see, again, how the pieces come together and how that starts to work when the games start coming and adversity starts to hit.
Evan Bland's with us here from the Omaha World Herald. And Evan, one last thought here on baseball before we get you in your Super Bowl prediction locked in for Sunday. Drew Christo. He's a guy that came in with a lot of fanfare last season, and I know Will Bolt said a couple things at the presser today about Drew. What do you think Husker baseball fans can expect from Drew Christo in his sophomore season?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting. I mean, he had a rough start. If you think back to last year, I think he only pitched like 5, gave up 3 home runs, a lot of hits, had a lot of short outings, and it's a little bit jarring, I think, because you think about his recruiting pedigree out of high school, when he was at Elkhorn, and he could have gone to Stanford, he could have gone to a number of blue blood college baseball programs. And I think there was an assumption that he would step right into the starting rotation last year and continue that dominance, and it didn't happen. And so to hear Will Bolt today say that Drew finished the fall in fantastic fashion, that his live outings this spring have been equally up to par, I think it's really encouraging. And again, you talk about the pitching depth that Nebraska has. They feel pretty good, I think, about their starting rotation with Emmett Olson, Jace Kaminska, and probably Caleb Clark, the freshman. But, if Drew Christo is coming along and is as sharp and his velo's up as they're saying, then suddenly this is a guy who, I mean, he could be a high-leverage bullpen arm on the weekends. You could put him as a midweek starter to give you, 5 quality innings every Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean, the value of guys like that can't be understated. And again, you combine that improvement with just his character and makeup and ability. Like it's really intriguing to see, what that could be. And I think he'd be one of those X factors when you talk about what the ceiling could be for Nebraska this spring.
Evan, Sunday, Super Bowl, Philly, Kansas City. Where's your head at?
I think it'll be a great game. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm a Broncos fan, so I can't wish the Chiefs well too often.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way it is. That's the way I grew up. But, the Husker angle's fun, too. It would be really interesting to see Sue get another title and Cam Jurgens in his rookie season, as the backup center, and Jack Stoll and what he could do. But just in terms of the game itself, I'm most excited to watch what Kansas City's offense does against Philadelphia's defense. I mean, everyone around here is familiar with Hassan Reddick now, played for Matt Rule at Temple, and has just been a wrecking ball. Really curious to see, if Kansas City's O-line can hold up and give Mahomes time to operate, in which case, you got to feel good about the Chiefs' chances. But if not, if they can get home, then I think it's going to be reminiscent of that Super Bowl against Tampa Bay for the Chiefs a couple of years ago. So ultimately, I think it's going to be a game that's down to the wire into the fourth quarter. But I think Philadelphia wins a close one.
Good pick. Love that.
I don't hate your take at all. Just as good as Reed and Mahomes are, you've got a front seven that's just a nightmare to deal with, and that's been that way all season long. Plus the Hurts factor. He's had ice water, man. He has been able to make plays, and you just got a better roster in Philly. I tend to agree with you, but I will keep my prediction saved for Friday. Evan Bland with us here, Omaha World Herald, Hail Varsity Radio. Evan, enjoy the week. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me. Try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. We've spent time on Husker football, and the offensive line returning production ranks 39th when it comes to the offense in college football. That's Bill Conley of ESPN. Defense, we got to find some dudes on the defensive line. What's the likeliness of that? Plenty of guys to pick from there. Some returning starters, some new faces. Elijah, I want to get into Aaron Rodgers for a moment and his time with Pat McAfee as A-Rod going into a darkness retreat for 4 days to help him see the light for his future.
That still seems better than last year where it was ayahuasca and...
I was going to say, how the hell do you pronounce ayahuasca? It's like ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca, and then what kind of cleanses was he doing last year?
I don't know the cleanse. You need to look that up. I just know that he has a fear of death, so he took ayahuasca to help deal with that. But he'll know soon after said retreat. Now, I'm not judging. I don't care if he goes to a darkness retreat or not, or doing psychedelics, as long as he's not a danger to himself or others from an OD standpoint, or he'll lose his mind, right? So it's a pretty cool opportunity to do some self-reflection in some isolation. Have you ever thought about doing a retreat, just like going away to cope with a loss? Like as a sports fan?
No, not really.
Well, I mean, just like you're so bummed out, you totally check out and you go be by yourself.
See, luckily,
some folks just watch games by themselves because they can't have people around. They're too high strung.
This show is my cathartic release after these types of things. You know,
okay.
I get after the Broncos lose on Sunday, I get my 5 minutes on Monday to complain and moan while you laugh at me, and then we move on. That's all I need to do.
I got to find an NFL team so I can feel or share your pain. We've got friends and colleagues that are diehard Viking fans, Chiefs fans. Aunt Mel's a Packer fan. Mama and Junior love Seattle. I just, once Marino set Snowflake the Dolphin free in Ace Ventura, I kind of quit following Miami.
No, see, I envy you. See, my roommate Darren is the exact same way.
I just watch and I love it.
My roommate Darren, he's the exact same way, where he doesn't have an NBA team, he doesn't have an NHL team, MLB, NFL, none of that. It's Huskers. That's what it is. And he says, you know what? When NFL Sunday rolls around, I'll flip on Sunday Ticket or NFL Red Zone and I'll watch. I'll enjoy. I watch for the stars. But I don't have a fan, and I'm jealous of that because there have been times, over the past 5 years especially, where my entire weekend gets ruined in the fall. I wake up on Saturday, I do our pregame show, I watch the Husker game, and now it's a disappointing postgame show where we have to be sad, and I get to wake up on Sunday with hope in my eyes for the Broncos, and then it's crushed yet again. So I envy him for that, but I've never once, I shouldn't say never once, 2009, the Texas Big 12 championship game, I did feel like I needed to get away from life for a little bit after that one. That one hurt.
That's totally fair because they played so well. Now, growing up, and my dad was like this, it was like a loss in the family, in our household, when Nebraska lost, just because you weren't used to it. Like the first big loss, what the hell happened? I think they lost at UCLA in '88. Aikman was quarterback, and it turned into a shootout, right? And I couldn't believe what was going on. This wasn't supposed to happen. I had kind of gotten into the fandom. I was 10 years old. Now I've switched away, and I just enjoy covering the action. I don't care who wins or loses. I don't root. It's not fanboy radio. But it'd be a lot cooler to cover a winning team.
Yeah.
I mean, and I have a lot of my career. I've covered a winning team, but it's been different levels of success. I mean, there's been a trip to a Big 12 championship game. The frozen tundra at Arrowhead. Going to Ireland was incredible. Hitting the road games in Boulder and Minneapolis and Iowa City. I mean, that's all fun. And the fan and listener interactions, great. Just being set up in the midst of it's wonderful. But as far as like a fan, I mean, your Texas 09 games right there where you couldn't believe what happened. And there's still games, like even the Wisconsin game this year. that team, that offense came from double digits down to win in the fourth quarter. I mean, that might have been you can make this argument. This is a horrible exercise, but it's similar to A-Rod's 4 Days of Darkness in some sort of cave, where you can go through and just pick the most heartbreaking Frost-era losses between the onside and Wisconsin. I know he wasn't coaching here then, but you've had a whole hell of a lot of choices for Nebraska. Even the Hail Mary during Riley. I mean, you've had a run of excruciating losses. For me, I think the Big 12 title games there, we were in some friends' basements, Calvin Klein's, and I mean, we had too many. I had a couple friends that showed up. It's always interesting when it's not your house, and you say, hey, can some of my college buddies that are in town come over? And we end up breaking beer bottles accidentally because we'd had too many. You get the old stare down because it's not your basement. Oops, where's the mop? I'm sorry. Son, you're cut off. So I remember that. And then of course, the Orange Bowl, where Nebraska almost beat Florida State. Remember that, like, super vividly because of how that was a Cinderella season, comparatively speaking. Now, Nebraska was actually pretty good, really good that year. They just hadn't been on that level. They'd always had a loss or two. So, but there are some sports fans that just can't take it anymore and go for a walk or go shut themselves in a room. Not anything sinister or dangerous, just they got to be alone. They got to decompress. What did I just watch? What did I just happen? See, even Hall of Fame MVP quarterbacks need some me time.
He does it to another level, though.
But he does it.
Did he? Okay,
Does he thrive on being weird and different? I mean, he's had these phases of, all right, psychedelics, and I'm going to the hole, self-imposed hole for 4 days.
Can you get this? Get this.
And then
the Panchakarma cleanse.
I'm gonna grow my hair out like a hippie or biker, whatever. And that's his thing. What's this cleanse he's doing?
The Panchakarma cleanse. He's done it for, I believe, 2 off seasons now. He hasn't announced if he's doing it the 3rd time, but it's a 12-day approach, which features 5 steps: self-induced vomiting.
Oh, I kind of remember hearing this.
Nausea, which is eliminating toxins through the nose, similar to a Yeti pot, except instead of water, it's like essential oils.
Neti, not Yeti.
Well, sorry, yes, Neti pot. It also
they sold those.
Includes enemas.
Jesus.
And self-induced bloodletting as well in order to detoxify the blood. Man,
so he's just losing it from everywhere. That's what you're telling me.
I'm pretty sure the only hole that's not covered there is the ear.
The epitome of self-harm. What is he doing?
Maybe there's some Husker fans out there
that take a rusty pocket knife and just start jabbing.
That'd be like 127 hours style.
My goodness.
Yeah, no, that's another level. I don't think there's ever been a Husker loss that's made me go, yeah.
I need some sort of spiritual cleanse.
You know what? I need an enema.
You've never said that's the key. That's the answer. They'll win against Wisconsin next year if I just get that enema. Oh, man. I hope not. And if you've gone to great lengths, like I joke with Jobu's Rum and live chicken and some sort of exercise the demons, whatever. You can joke and have fun with it. There's been superstition. Lucky pair of boxers, socks.
Golden thong.
Lucky hat, sweatshirt. I mean, you have your lucky Husker shirt, and many of you have burnt the ones you thought was lucky and you bought new. And that's all right. But no, I mean, is this for attention, or is he just that transparent with McAfee? Because he just sounds like a flake. He just sounds like an absolute flake, and I'd take him in a New York Minute on my football team if I'm Vegas. Mm-hmm.
Well,
or I'm New Orleans.
Well, the argument I've been hearing from
Green Bay's going to move on from him.
But the argument I'm hearing from some Vegas fans is, would you rather give up for that draft capital for an aging Aaron Rodgers, or would you use that same draft capital, trade up, and go get yourself C.J. Stroud in the 1st round?
I'd go get Bryce, but
I mean that's Trading up for like the 6th overall pick is a little different from the first overall pick.
Sure, but if you're going to trade up,
I love what C.J. Stroud projects.
I like him too. I think he's good. I think you've got 2 or 3 really talented quarterbacks in this draft, and then you got some other guys that can turn into good quarterbacks. We'll get there closer to May with the draft class, but no, I think Rodgers can play. He had a bad thumb. That's part of his deal. He didn't have a receiving core that he was comfortable with, and he wasn't really kind of grinding with those guys in the offseason anyway. But he's still top 5. Awesome. I mean, Brady's gone. You still have Burrow. Lamar's probably not. Josh Allen. You've got
Russell Wilson.
Right. Well, you've got a good crew. You got a great core of quarterbacks. You just do. But I would go get Rodgers, and I think he could click because Adams is on that roster. That's his security blanket. You have the tight end. You have the running game. Presumably they'll do better on the offensive line. I think him and McDaniels could work. I'm Green Bay. I'm just sick of the hijinks, and this is the second generation of tell me how much you want me, because, you went through it every year with Favre. Is he back? Is he retiring? What's going on? And then Rodgers. Those guys just hate training camp, plain and simple, and it's a shadow of what training camp used to be if you talk to the old NFL vets. We'll hear from Tom Rathman tomorrow. We'll catch up with Tom Rathman tomorrow, Russ Hochstein tomorrow, Brandon Vogel tomorrow. And then Lars Anderson will join us Friday to talk Jalen Hurts, his relationship with Jalen, and that Super Bowl opportunity. But no, I had to just share a few thoughts here on Aaron Rodgers and the 4-day, 4-night darkness retreat. That sounds good. But this cleanse you're talking about is a whole new level of whatever. And then, the hallucinogen. Say it for me.
Hallucinogens?
Hallucinogens. Gosh darn it. Sorry about that. Hallucinogens it's a whole different thing. You're in a different space anyway, trying to do this meditation deal. Let's dose up and live our worst nightmare for about an 18-hour period.
I knew a guy back in high school that thought he read the coverages better off hallucinogens.
Seriously?
True story.
Not
gonna name any names.
Nope.
He'd show up to practice
he was dosed.
Yeah.
Really?
Thought he saw the coverages better. I don't think he did.
A lot of lasers.
Threw a lot of picks.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. It's time for a Jock Doc Wednesday, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. A Jock Doc Wednesday with Dr. Robert Dugas. Dr. Dugas, thanks for a few minutes. Nice to have you on with us here on Hail Varsity. How are you?
Yeah, we're doing fine. Thanks for having me in.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun this weekend with the Super Bowl, and all eyes are on that Kansas City offense, Dr. Dugas. And wanted to get your take on Patrick Mahomes between when that high ankle sprain happened and how he was able to navigate through the AFC title game. He had media day today, did Mahomes, and he said he's in a better spot. He gutted it out, didn't he, in that AFC title game? What are some remnants? What would some concerns be from you medically as he gets ready for Super Bowl Sunday?
Yeah, well, those high ankle sprains are typically much more painful for an individual to get back even to walking compared to what he did during the game last week. It says a lot about his athleticism and his desire and his will to compete with pain, because he was hurting. You could kind of see that, and I think a lot has to be based on Andy Reid adjusting what he asked him to do in that game. From what I remember, the only time he crossed the line of scrimmage was on that last play to get close enough to try and kick that field goal. Mm-hmm. Where otherwise he got rid of the ball and wasn't going to, take a hit, which, could have then put him on the sideline for the rest of the ball game.
Dr. Robert Dugas with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, a Jock Doc Wednesday. We're finishing up here on Patrick Mahomes. Just a an all clear before Sunday with the Super Bowl. What do you think he's going to need to be able to do against that Philly pass rush?
Well, he'll have a couple extra weeks of that intense treatment. That doesn't necessarily heal the ligaments any faster, but it does decrease the stiffness and can diminish the amount of pain he has when he's weight-bearing. If you notice, when he would pull up from a throw or those types of things, he'd kind of tiptoe on that leg, and that's frequently what we see in the office with someone with a high ankle sprain. They don't want to put their heel down because it hurts them the most when their foot comes up into dorsiflexion, which is bringing it up off of the ground. So he'll likely be taped and or braced and move forward with some limited game plan. I'm sure it won't be the Patrick Mahomes we see without an injury, but there's no question he'll get through that game. And just the game plan will be adjusted to try and keep those guys off of him as best as they can.
Now, without any inside knowledge here, what type of recovery are we looking at? Is this injury, is the recovery dating back to the original date it happened against the Bills? Or considering he played a game only a week later, is that now like the amended date of when this quote-unquote happened? Just because of, I mean, we saw the pain that he was in for that AFC title game
really
against the Bengals. He was hobbled. Does that slow down the recovery process and make that almost a new injury date, or are we still going back to that Buffalo Bills game as like a quote-unquote original injury date in terms of recovery time and how he's going to be feeling for the Super Bowl?
I don't, from watching the game, I don't recall him truly re-injuring it other than experiencing the soreness that you would feel because of the actions he was attempting to perform. But the healing process, I doubt, was retarded. With regards to being slowed down. However, these things frequently are one of the most limiting type injuries that an NFL player gets, and you can have a regular ankle sprain, feel fine in a week to 10 days, and on average, NFL players frequently miss a month or more of their season when they have a severe high ankle sprain.
Dr. Robert Dugas with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc. Wednesday, we're talking Patrick Mahomes. His Super Bowl 57 is gearing up Sunday against Philly and Kansas City. And Dr. Dugas, I mean, Mahomes is so special with what he does with his arm talent. The extending of plays is what makes him special. And then you always knew he's a big-time player, but to your point, his toughness and his will to win really on full display against the Bengals. As you kind of look to this matchup right now, is his rhythm and timing, if he wants to go with a quick game against a fast pass rush, is this high ankle sprain gonna hurt his rhythm, or is this old hat by now for him just because of how comfortable he is with Bieniemy and with Andy Reid?
I think it's his comfort level is such that they're coming up with a game plan to limit his exposure to that pass rush, especially early on. And then as the game goes on, they'll take more risk if they need to. But yes, his skill and knowledge of the game and working with Bieniemy and Reid are going to, you're going to still say he's hurt, and he's playing, hurt as well as being injured. I remember an old high school coach of mine told us at that point, you got to know two things about playing football. You got to know what being hurt is, and you got to know what being injured is, because everybody plays hurt. You can't play most of the time when you're injured, but Patrick is showing us you can play when you're injured also.
That's a great point, and that is the old question, isn't it? Are you hurt or are you injured? And and you just look the coach in the eye and say a little bit of both, but keep me in, right?
yeah, especially at this point and this time of the year in the NFL, he's not going to watch from the sideline.
Now, whenever you're talking about playing hurt, could painkillers be in play for Patrick Mahomes in some form on Sunday? Because I think back to the NFC title game with Brock Purdy. He hurts the throwing hand. That's really not an option. You have to be able to grip the football. Painkiller is not a great option there. Is that possible on an ankle with the quarterback?
It would be highly unlikely because then he would lose a sense of some of the proprioception or the balance. that he would have. Now, he could, take an acetaminophen or some ibuprofen or something called Toradol, which is a painkiller. There wouldn't be anything likely different than that, where you'll hear them talk about someone injuring their AC joint, and they go into the locker room and they come out and the announcers say, well, we know what happened there. He got a little bit of that medicine put in that shoulder and it doesn't hurt anymore. You really wouldn't do any injections around the ankle to allow him to play without pain, because he'd lose the ability to move the ankle and understand what cutting right and left was, which is called proprioception, which is lost if your nerve isn't working correctly.
Dr. Robert Dugas with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Jock Doc Wednesday, Patrick Mahomes gearing up for the Super Bowl. Dr. Dugas, just about 30 seconds here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how badly would you grade or rate what Mahomes has gone through from a high ankle sprain? How severe is it from your experience?
It's surprising that he's able to function the way that he does. I think he shows when it really bugs him. If it's not a timing type deal and he has to extend those plays a little bit. Again, it's just about his character and his will. And I think pretty much anybody in that game would say they're not coming out unless you're going to carry me off the field. And that's how he's going to get through again on Sunday. Dr.
Robert Dugas with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Dugas, thanks for the time. Great to spend a few minutes with you.
Yeah, I'm glad we got together, and hope y'all have a good rest of the evening, and we'll see who gets through it on Sunday. But I think our two guys on the Philly team, I'm going to have to pull for.
Absolutely, I think it's a little Nebraska love there.
Yeah,
take care.
Exactly. Y'all have a good night.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Reminder to get buckled up. Hands on the wheel, eyes in mind, straight ahead. The driver has one job to drive. The message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Nebraska driving like it's driver's ed right now to the rim. They are down by 13.
Well, there's positives, though. Positive.
I know. Tominaga.
Through 10 minutes, Nebraska on pace to score 30 points in the first half and 60 points overall. That's not bad for where this offense has been. On the downside, Michigan is on pace to score 100 points today.
Yeah, Michigan has a habit of just smoking Nebraska. Now, Tominaga opened up with 2 for 2 from three-point land. You've had Jamarcus Lawrence with some turnover issues. You've had a lid on the free throw line for Nebraska.
And Michigan's been hitting about all their threes.
They've done that. And then it seems like Nebraska just, you had Wilcher come in and drill a three, which is good. But Nebraska's missed some jumpers, but their turnover numbers right now are not good through the first 10 minutes of play. Nebraska with 5 turnovers through they had 7 against Penn State. Is that right? They're shooting 38%, 3 for 4 from three-point land. Williams has gotten going a little bit. They've kind of kept Michigan in check from the free throw line. They're only 1 for 1.
But Michigan has its hands right now.
Michigan 6 for 10 from 3, 12-17, 71% from the floor.
And they're currently on a 20-3 run. So
yeah, because Nebraska did have a lead.
So for anyone turning their radio dials from Husker Basketball to Hail Varsity Radio, welcome.
Yes. You should have never gone away. We warned you. Kind of kidding. Tomorrow on the show, we're excited, man. Going to spend time with Brandon Vogel from Hail Varsity. Russ Hochstein, Super Bowl champ. He joined us when Brady retired. We'll get his take on the big game. And then 2-time Super Bowl champ, Russ Hochstein, is going to kick us off. And then also Tom Rathman will be with us. Gary Barnett joins the show. So we're just absolutely loaded up tomorrow, Friday, as we keep rocking and rolling with Super Week. Should be good. Some more thoughts. We'll flip over the defensive side of the ball for Nebraska football with some of their newcomers and with this roster reset. Some of the names you know, some of the names you need to know for Big Red football. And we'll figure out what happens here with Nebraska-Michigan, if it's a marvelous comeback or if you should have laid the points and taken Michigan. Right now, it's that 11's looking real good if you're wearing maize and blue. So plans tonight, are you continuing your diet? It's not going into any Aaron Rodgers territory, is it?
Well, no, I was just going to say, as we get nearer to Friday, we got to start thinking of some new options for that steak and a beer bet. It might become a salad and a seltzer bet on Friday.
Oh, we'll keep it steak and a beer. I'm not on any diet, clearly.
Yeah, other than that, tonight, going to roll back home, eat my single chicken breast with some steamed veggies. I'll enjoy that.
Not awful.
And then I'll brainstorm. Me and Brandon Vogel got something in the works coming down the line for Hail Varsity. So we're going to do some brainstorming on that. And we'll know about that as soon as we can.
4 o'clock tomorrow. Find us on Hail Varsity. Thanks.